You know that feeling, right? That sudden drop in your stomach, or maybe that tight feeling of worry you just can't seem to shake, or even that jolt of pure fear that seems to come out of absolutely nowhere. We've all felt that, I think. It's just part of being human.
Definitely.
So today on The Deep Dive, we're tackling these really fundamental feelings head on. One of you shared a fantastic set of articles looking into fear and anxiety, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack together.
Yeah, our goal today is really to get a handle on what makes fear and anxiety. Well, what makes them tick. We want to understand the core differences,
Right.
explore where they come from, how they actually impact our lives, and maybe most importantly, look at some practical ways we can navigate these really powerful emotions.
Okay.
And we'll be drawing on the research in these articles you sent, trying to shed some light on the psychology behind it all.
Okay, let's dive in then. Fear and anxiety, we use those words almost interchangeably sometimes, don't we?
Yeah.
But the sources we looked at really pulled them apart. Fear seems to be like the immediate alarm.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Fear is your body's rapid, like right now response to a known specific danger.
Okay.
Think of it like your internal warning signal just screaming, danger right now.
Yeah.
It's usually triggered by something we sense, see, hear, touch. Something our brain flags as dangerous.
And then boom, fight or flight.
Pretty much instantly, yeah. The body shifts straight into that mode.
So it's quick, it's focused on this moment, makes sense. But anxiety, that feels different based on the articles.
It is. Anxiety is more future-oriented. It's that unease or worry about something kind of vague or uncertain that might happen later on.
Oh, okay.
The articles describe it as like a state of anticipation. It often comes with that mental tension, maybe that knot in your stomach you mentioned, and sometimes physical tension too. And interestingly, anxiety can even be triggered by other emotions, like a leftover fear, or by memories kind of coloring how we see the future.
So the really big difference is about time, isn't it? Fear is now, anxiety is later.
Precisely. Fear is about the present danger. Anxiety is looking ahead at potential trouble. That's the key distinction.
And fear goes away when the danger's gone, but anxiety can linger.
That's generally right. Fear tends to be short-lived. But anxiety, yeah, it can stick around because the worry source is often less concrete. It's those what-if thoughts swirling around. And that difference in time focus helps explain why anxiety can become more of a long-term thing for some people.
Okay, but we all worry, right? Like a big presentation, maybe a change at work, normal stuff. When does that cross the line? When does it become an actual disorder?
Yeah, that's such an important question. The sources are really clear on this. Anxiety disorders are way more than just everyday anxious feelings.
Okay.
It's when that fear or worry becomes excessive. It's there, like almost all the time. And crucially, it feels totally out of proportion to whatever the situation actually is.
So intensity, duration.
Exactly. Those are key. But the real sign it's become a disorder is when it starts seriously messing with your life. Your job, school, relationships, just your daily routines.
Right. When it stops you from functioning normally.
That's the clincher. That impact, combined with the intensity and how long it lasts, that's what separates normal anxiety from a condition needing, maybe some professional help.
And it sounds like these conditions are actually, well, pretty common. The U.S. numbers seem really high.
They are surprisingly high, yeah. The research suggests quite large numbers, like specific phobias, spiders, heights, that kind of thing, maybe 8 to 12% of adults.
Wow.
Social anxiety, that fear of social settings, around 7%. Panic disorder, those sudden intense fear waves, maybe 2 to 3%. And GAD, generalized anxiety, that constant worry, about 2.9%.
And women are diagnosed more often.
Yeah, the data suggests women are more likely to be diagnosed across several anxiety disorders. These numbers really just highlight how significant anxiety is, from a public health standpoint.
Definitely shows why understanding it better is so important. Okay, so we know what they are, but why? Why do we even have fear and anxiety? What's the point, evolutionarily speaking?
The evolutionary roots. Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. Fear, being the older one, has a pretty clear survival advantage, right?
Makes sense. Avoid the tiger, stay alive.
Exactly. It's instinctive, super fast reaction to immediate danger, predators, sudden natural threats. This system was honed over millions of years when those physical dangers were everywhere. It's basic protection.
Just danger, react. But anxiety, it evolved later, didn't it?
That's the thinking, yeah. Anxiety, the more complex humankind likely developed alongside our fancier cognitive skills.
Like thinking ahead, language.
Abstract thought, planning, complex language, living in big social groups, all that stuff probably played a role. You can almost see it as that basic fear response getting more sophisticated as our brains did.
And the brain pathways are different too. Fear used that quick route through the amygdala.
Spot on. For fear, the wiring's pretty direct and fast. The amygdala, that little almond-shaped bit deep in the brain, it's key for spotting and reacting super quickly, often before our thinking brain even catches up.
Right, the rapid response.
But anxiety, that involves more brain real estate, more complex processing.
More thinking parts involved.
Exactly. There's more input from the cortex, the part that does the reasoning and thinking, that lets us anticipate those future threats, not just react to immediate ones, and helps us navigate our complex social world.
Which brings us to that mismatch hypothesis you mentioned from the sources. I found that really interesting. Can you break that down?
Sure. The mismatch hypothesis is basically this idea. Our ancient threat detection systems, built for immediate physical dangers like, lions,
Right.
they can get triggered and kind of overreact to modern stressors, things that aren't immediate physical threats like work deadlines, money worries, even social media pressure.
So our brain's old hardware is trying to run modern software,
It's a
basically.
great analogy. Yeah, it's trying to process these abstract, chronic, often social worries, and sometimes it just gets overwhelmed, sets off the alarms for things it wasn't really designed for.
Explains a lot about modern anxiety levels. But the sources also mentioned anxiety might have been helpful in early societies, not just for individuals.
Absolutely. Beyond just keeping individuals safe, anxiety, especially that more complex social kind, probably helped the group survive.
How so?
Well, it could have fostered a stronger sense of community, loyalty, sticking to the rules. People who were more anxious about potential dangers might have been more cautious, which could benefit everyone.
And parents teaching kids to be careful, that's anxiety-driven too.
Precisely. Parents, naturally anxious about their kids' safety and fitting into the group, would teach caution, social norms, group values. That long human childhood gives a big window for that kind of social learning where anxiety about danger or social mistakes helps guide behavior.
But that same mechanism can go wrong,
Right.
right? Leading to things like really bad social anxiety.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword. That fundamental need to belong, vital for survival back then. When it gets amplified or miscalibrated today, it can become debilitating social anxiety. The fear of being judged gets blown way out of proportion.
Like that basic need for connection just goes haywire.
Sort of, yeah. It becomes harmful instead of helpful.
The sources had a table summarizing fear versus anxiety, looking at evolution and cognition. That was really helpful.
Yeah, it lays it out nicely. Fear, ancient, instinctive, amygdala-driven, immediate threat, individual survival, anxiety. Later evolution, cortex involved, future social threat, maybe group cohesion and planning. Understanding those differences is key.
Okay, so I've got the why. Let's get into the how. What's actually happening inside our brains and bodies during fear and anxiety?
Right, the biological landscape. It's incredibly complex. The sources talk about these specific brain circuits. The amygdala, as we said, is that rapid alert.
The smoke detector, always scanning.
Exactly. And even within the amygdala, different parts do different jobs. The lateral and basal nuclei are big on learning fear associations, like learning that this place is scary because something bad happened there.
Yeah.
Then the central nucleus is like the output manager. It coordinates the body's whole fear response. So one part learns the fear, another gets you ready to react.
And the hippocampus helps remember the context, where and when.
Precisely. The hippocampus adds the details. Where did it happen? When? That helps us avoid similar situations later. It's like the location tag for the fear memory.
But it's not all alarm bells. There's the prefrontal cortex. The fire department, as the source called it.
Yeah, I like that analogy too. The prefrontal cortex, especially the medial part up front, is our executive control, decision-making, and crucially, emotional regulation.
Putting the brakes on the amygdala.
Essentially, yes. It helps calm down the fear response once the threat's gone, or if we realize it wasn't that big a deal after all.
So in anxiety disorders, is that balance off? Like the smoke detector's too sensitive and the fire department's slow to respond.
That's a really good way to think about it. Research suggests in anxiety disorders, the amygdala might be hyperreactive alarms going off more easily. And at the same time, the prefrontal cortex might be less effective at dampening that activity down. And chronic stress can actually make this worse, potentially weakening the PFC's control.
Wow. And it's not just brain structures, right? It's also about the chemicals, neurotransmitters,
Oh,
hormones.
absolutely. When the brain senses a threat, the amygdala signals the hypothalamus. That kicks off a chain reaction involving the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight system, and the HPA
The
axis.
stress command center.
Basically, yeah. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Signals go down this chain, leading to the release of stress hormones, adrenaline or epinephrine for that immediate energy burst,
Right.
and cortisol, which helps the body cope with stress over a longer time.
And neurotransmitters like GABA and serotonin. We hear about those a lot with anxiety treatments.
Yeah, they're crucial. GABA is the brain's main calm-down neurotransmitter. It reduces nerve activity. That's why drugs like benzodiazepines work. They boost GABA's effects.
Okay.
Serotonin is huge for mood regulation. Problems in the serotonin system are linked to both anxiety and depression. That's why SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are common treatments. They increase available serotonin. There's even evidence that our individual genetics, how our bodies handle serotonin, can affect how prone we are to anxiety.
What about norepinephrine and dopamine?
Norepinephrine is also part of the stress response, keeps us alert. Useful in danger, but imbalances can contribute to anxiety feelings. Dopamine, known for reward and motivation, has a more complex role in anxiety that we're still figuring out.
And chronic stress can just mess up this whole chemical balance.
It really can. Long-term exposure to stress hormones like cortisol can actually change those key brain areas, amygdala, hippocampus, PFC. It can sort of rewire the anxiety circuits.
A shit cycle.
Exactly. Stress makes you more anxious. Anxiety fuels the stress response. It can become a feedback loop.
So all this brain stuff translates into very real feelings in the body.
Right.
That fight or flight response. What's happening physically.
Right. The sympathetic nervous system and those hormones trigger a cascade. Heart rate, blood pressure go up, get oxygenated muscles fast. Breathing gets rapid, more oxygen intake. Blood shifts from digestion to limbs. Pupils dilate, better vision. Muscles tense up. Glucose gets released for energy. Senses sharpen. It's all prepping for action.
The classic racing heart, sweating, shaking.
Precisely. Palpitations, sweating, trembling, feeling short of breath, chest tightness, dizziness, nausea, muscle tension, all common physical signs. Adaptive in short bursts, but exhausting when it's chronic.
The sources also mention the freeze response. What's that about?
Right. Besides fight or flight, there's freeze. Becoming immobile, maybe heart rate slows and speeds up, feeling detached. It's another basic reaction to overwhelming threat, sometimes adaptive, sometimes it stops us from coping actively.
And the gut-brain connection. Anxiety really affects your stomach, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The gut-brain axis is a two-way street. Anxiety and stress hormones directly impact digestion, can change gut motility, diarrhea, constipation, increase stomach acid, even affect the gut microbiome, the bacteria living there.
So yeah, those stomach issues are very real physical effects.
Definitely. It's a full body experience, not just in your head.
Not at all. It's brain, chemicals, body, all interconnected.
Totally.
Okay, so that's the biology. Let's switch gears to the psychological side. How do our thoughts, our past experiences, shape anxiety?
This is about the mind's inner workings. Our cognitive patterns, the ways we habitually think, are huge in triggering and maintaining anxiety.
Like always worrying, expecting the worst. Catastrophizing.
Exactly. Persistent worry, that endless loop of negative what-ifs, is classic anxiety.
Yeah.
And catastrophizing, yeah. Jumping to the worst possible outcome. Like making one small mistake at work and instantly thinking, I'm getting fired.
Right. Or overgeneralizing. One bad date means you're terrible at relationships.
Precisely. One awkward interaction means I'm socially inept. Then there's hypervigilance, constantly scanning for threats, either outside or inside your own body. And difficulty tolerating uncertainty, that feeling you have to know or control everything, which fuels worry and endless planning.
It sounds like these thought patterns create a really nasty cycle of emotions.
They absolutely do. Negative thoughts fuel anxious feelings, which seem to confirm the negative thoughts. Round and round it goes. That's why cognitive therapy is focused so much on recognizing and challenging these patterns, breaking that loop.
And past experiences, especially trauma, they leave a big mark too.
Oh, for sure. Traumatic events can shatter our sense of safety, make us much more vulnerable to fear and anxiety. Fear can be learned through classical conditioning, associating something neutral with something bad, like the car accident example, fear of that specific intersection.
And anxiety itself can be learned by watching others or through bad experiences like bullying.
Exactly. Observational learning: a kid sees an anxious parent, learns anxious responses, or direct negative experiences, like bullying leading to social anxiety. These things shape our core beliefs about ourselves and the world, often negatively.
And the avoidance thing we talked about, trying to escape anxiety actually keeps it going.
That's such a crucial point. Avoidance gives temporary relief, sure, but it stops you from having corrective experiences.
You never learn the situation isn't that dangerous, or that you can cope.
Right, so the anxiety gets reinforced. And sometimes it leads to that feeling of learned helplessness, like nothing you do matters.
But it's not just internal stuff. Our environment, social situations, they trigger anxiety too.
Definitely. Life stressors, work pressure, money problems, relationship issues, health scares, big changes, they're all potential triggers.
Makes sense.
And social factors matter too. Feeling isolated, societal pressures about success or body image, experiencing discrimination, not having good support system.
And childhood adversity.
Yeah, things like neglect or growing up with a lot of conflict can increase vulnerability later on. It's often a two-way street. Circumstances influence anxiety, and anxiety influences our circumstances.
So when do all these pieces, biology, psychology, environment, come together to form actual anxiety disorder?
It's when the fear and anxiety become excessive, persistent, cause real distress, and here's the key again, really interfere with functioning in daily life. It's moved beyond typical worry into a diagnosable condition.
Okay, let's walk through some of the main ones. Generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, what defines that?
GAD is about that persistent, excessive, hard-to-control worry we mentioned. But the worry is broad jumps between everyday concerns like work, family, money, even small stuff.
Free-floating worry.
That's often how it's described, yeah. To get diagnosed, this worry pattern needs to be there more days than not for at least 6 months, be tough to control, and come with physical symptoms.
Like restlessness, fatigue.
Right. Restlessness, easily tired, trouble concentrating, irritability, muscle tension, sleep problems. And it has to cause significant distress or impair functioning.
Then panic disorder. That sounds terrifying.
It really is. It involves recurrent, unexpected panic attacks, these sudden surges of intense fear that peak super fast, like within minutes.
And the symptoms are intense.
Very. Racing heart, sweating, trembling, feeling like you can't breathe, chest pain, dizziness, feeling like you're losing control or even dying. Just awful.
Right.
And the key diagnostic part isn't just the attacks themselves. It's having at least one attack followed by a month or more of either worrying constantly about having more attacks or changing your behavior significantly to avoid them. That fear of fear.
Okay. What about social anxiety disorder or social phobia? Lots of people feel shy, but this is more intense.
Much more intense. It's a marked, persistent fear of social or performance situations where you might be scrutinized. The core fear is doing something embarrassing or showing anxiety symptoms that lead to negative judgment or rejection.
Like public speaking, parties.
Yeah, public speaking, meeting new people, eating in public, parties, even talking to authority figures. Exposure almost always provokes anxiety, maybe even a panic attack.
So people avoid these situations.
Often, yeah. Or they endure them with intense distress. The fear is way out of proportion, lasts 6 months or more, and causes significant impairment.
And specific phobias, spiders, heights, flying those intense, irrational fears.
Exactly. Excessive, persistent fear of a specific thing or situation that poses little real danger. Exposure triggers immediate anxiety, maybe panic.
Do people know the fear is irrational?
Usually adults do, yeah. They recognize it's excessive, though kids might not. They actively avoid the feared thing or endure it with intense distress, and it significantly interferes with their life. Lasts 6 months plus.
And that avoidance theme comes up again across these disorders.
It's a really common thread. Short-term relief, long-term problem, because it maintains the anxiety.
Then PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that follows a trauma, and the symptoms seem different.
Yes, PTSD develops after exposure to a traumatic event, actual or threatened death, serious injury, sexual violence, directly experiencing it, witnessing it, learning about it happening to someone close, or repeated exposure like first responders.
And the symptom clusters.
4 main ones, lasting over a month, causing distress or impairment. Intrusion symptoms, memories, dreams, flashbacks, distress at reminders, avoidance of thoughts, feelings, external reminders, negative changes in thoughts and mood, memory gaps, negative beliefs, blame, loss of interest, detachment, inability to feel positive emotions, and changes in arousal reactivity, irritability, risky behavior, hypervigilance, startle response, concentration problems, sleep issues.
It's so important to remember, like the source said, that the perceived threat feels incredibly real to the person experiencing it, even if it looks disproportionate from the outside.
Absolutely crucial. That subjective experience is valid and shaped by all these underlying factors. Empathy is key. And yeah, the source also mentions others like agoraphobia, separation anxiety, selective mutism, all related but distinct.
That summary table in the sources comparing the disorders was really useful for seeing the different profiles.
Yeah, it does a good job showing the core features and key criteria for each, highlighting how they differ despite all falling under that anxiety umbrella.
Okay, so we know what they are. Let's talk about the impact. The sources called it a ripple effect. Sounds like it touches everything.
It really can. Chronic fear and anxiety aren't just feelings, they seep into every part of life. The mental and physical health toll is significant. We know anxiety often goes hand in hand with depression. And sadly, in severe cases, it can increase risks for other serious issues, including suicidal thoughts.
And the physical toll is huge too. Heart, immune system, gut.
Absolutely. Constant stress response activation wears the body down. Increased risk of cardiovascular issues like high blood pressure, heart disease. It can suppress the immune system, making you more prone to getting sick, maybe slower healing.
Right.
Major impact on the gut, contributing to things like IBS, chronic muscle pain, tension headaches, can even worsen respiratory conditions like asthma. It's this whole biopsychosocial cascade. Mental distress affects physiology, which affects physical health, which impacts functioning, increases stress, feeds back into anxiety.
Wow, and relationships take a hit too.
They really do. Anxiety can manifest in ways that push people away. Maybe constant reassurance seeking, which drains partners. Or withdrawal emotionally or socially, which gets misinterpreted.
Yeah.
Irritability is common. Difficulty being vulnerable hinders intimacy. It can become this cycle of stress and misunderstanding that really damages connections.
And performance, school, work.
Big impact there, too. Anxiety messes with executive functions, focus, concentration, memory recall, decision-making, flexibility, creativity, all vital for learning and working.
So procrastination, test anxiety at school.
Yeah. Fear of failure, reluctance to participate, avoiding challenges. At work, performance anxiety, poor concentration leading to mistakes, low confidence, avoiding opportunities, absenteeism, lower productivity. The economic costs of untreated anxiety are actually massive.
Ultimately, it just sounds like it really shrinks your world and diminishes your quality of life.
It absolutely can. Makes it hard to enjoy simple things, leisure, self-care, trying new stuff, constant worry, poor sleep. It just robs you of being present. And the paradox is, the avoidance meant to protect you ends up making life smaller and less fulfilling.
That's a heavy picture. But the sources offer a lot of hope with management and treatment strategies. Let's get into those pathways to calm.
Yes, absolutely. The good news is there are many effective strategies, often used together, tailored to the person. Empowering self-help stuff is often a great place to start.
Like lifestyle adjustments, exercise, diet, sleep. We hear it a lot, but the sources stress how important these basics are for anxiety.
They really are foundational. Regular physical activity is a huge mood booster and stress reliever. A balanced diet protein, complex carbs, fruits, veggies, limiting processed stuff, and sugar impacts overall well-being and even stress perception.
Right.
Prioritizing sleep, aiming for 7-9 hours, consistent routine is critical.
Yeah.
The sleep-mental health link is so strong. And being mindful of alcohol and caffeine may be cutting back, as they can worsen anxiety and disrupt sleep.
And relaxation techniques. Mindfulness, deep breathing.
Yeah, practical tools you can use anywhere. Mindfulness meditation focusing on the present without judgment helps detach from racing thoughts. Deep diaphragmatic breathing activates the relaxation response, slows the heart rate. Progressive muscle relaxation tensing and releasing muscles helps you notice and let go of physical tension.
Then there's professional help. Talk therapy, especially CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, comes up a lot.
CBT is really a cornerstone, well-researched, very effective. The core idea is thoughts, feelings, behaviors are linked. Change unhelpful thoughts and behaviors, and you reduce anxiety.
What does that look like in practice?
Techniques like cognitive restructuring, identifying and challenging anxious thoughts. Guided discovery therapist helps you examine evidence. Thought records. Behavioral activations, scheduling positive activities. Behavioral experiments, testing fears safely. Skills training for coping. Lots of tools.
And exposure therapy. Facing your fears sounds scary.
It can sound daunting, definitely. But it's incredibly effective, especially for phobias, PTSD. It involves gradual, systematic exposure to feared things in a safe environment.
And the goal being?
To confront fears, learn the bad outcomes are unlikely or manageable, and let the anxiety decrease through habituation. Facing the fear, reduces the fear, essentially.
How is it done?
Different ways. In vivo real life, imaginal in your mind, virtual reality, VRET, is becoming more common. Interoceptive exposure facing feared physical sensations. Often done gradually, starting small, maybe paired with the relaxation techniques.
And medication. That's an important option, too.
Very important for many people, especially with moderate to severe anxiety. Often used alongside therapy. Meds mainly alleviate symptoms, don't cure the root cause, and finding the right one takes time, working with a doctor.
SSRIs and SNRIs are common first choices.
Yes, those antidepressants affecting serotonin and norepinephrine are often first line. Buspirone is another option, especially for GAD, works differently, maybe fewer side effects.
What about other meds?
Sometimes older antidepressants like TCAs or antiepileptics like pregabalin or even low-dose atypical antipsychotics are used, but usually with more caution about side effects.
And benzodiazepines like Xanax or Valium.
They work fast, boost GABA, great for short-term, acute relief. But big risks, tolerance, dependence, withdrawal, cognitive issues. So generally for short-term or crisis use, not long-term management, beta blockers can help physical symptoms like racing heart, especially for performance anxiety, but don't touch the psychological side.
So the best approach is often combined. Meds, therapy, lifestyle.
Very often, yes. Meds can reduce symptoms enough to make therapy more effective. Therapy provides long-term coping skills, lifestyle supports overall well-being, and the person has to be an active participant in their treatment. That's key.
That treatment summary table really helps visualize all the options and considerations. It shows it's a personal journey.
Exactly. It highlights the range of tools and that tailoring the plan to the individual is crucial for success.
Okay, moving beyond the individual. The sources talked about broader factors. Stigma around mental health is still a huge problem, isn't it?
Oh, massive. Stigma, negative public attitudes, self-shame, systemic barriers. It's so harmful. Worsens symptoms, stops people seeking help, leads to isolation, discrimination.
The stigma paradox, fearing judgment,
Yeah.
actually leads to judgment.
Yeah, it reinforces the anxiety. That's why breaking the silence, anti-stigma campaigns, creating safe environments are vital. Encouraging help-seeking means raising awareness, helping people recognize they need support, making resources known, fostering openness.
What helps people seek help?
Good past experiences, strong social support, knowing about mental health literacy, all make a difference.
And culture plays a big role, too, in how anxiety is viewed and expressed.
Absolutely. Culture shapes what triggers anxiety, how people show symptoms, emotional versus physical complaints. Think about eye contact norms or collectivist versus individualist values.
Like that Taijin Kyofusho example in East Asia, fear of offending others.
Exactly. Prevalence rates vary, definitions of distress vary, language barriers, cultural beliefs about mental health. It all means Western models don't always fit. We need cultural sensitivity and adaptation and care.
And anxiety changes across the lifespan, from kids to older adults.
It really does. Infancy childhood fears noises, strangers, separation. Normal, but can become disorders. School-age adolescence, a high-risk time. School, peer pressure, identity issues. Social anxiety, panic often emerge then.
Adulthood brings career, relationship stress.
Right. Existing disorders might persist or worsen, new ones emerge. Older adulthood GAD is common. Unique worries. Health, falls, independence, loss, memory, isolation, mortality. Social phobia can arise from physical changes. PTSD can happen at any age. Understanding these developmental stages helps tailor prevention and treatment.
So looking ahead, what's exciting in research and future directions? The horizon of hope.
It's actually a really hopeful time. Lots of innovation. Psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, psilocybin, MDMA showing promise for anxiety, PTSD, potential for a lasting change from short treatments, maybe by boosting neuroplasticity, shifting perspectives.
A real paradigm shift.
Definitely. And digital therapeutics online programs, apps based on CBT, making evidence-based help much more accessible.
And technology like virtual reality for exposure therapy.
Yeah, VRET is becoming more sophisticated, safe, controlled exposure, often more acceptable than real-life exposure initially. Plus, mental health apps for tracking, exercises, support quality varies, but the potential for access is huge. Though we also have to watch the downside social media anxiety link, especially for kids. Need responsible use.
And the genetics, epigenetics, biomarkers research sounds like it could lead to personalized treatment.
That's the big hope. Understanding the gene-environment interactions, how things like stress change gene expression via epigenetics. It's fascinating. Identifying biomarkers, maybe from blood tests or brain scans, could potentially lead to earlier diagnosis. Predicting treatment response, developing new drug targets, personalized psychiatry is the goal.
It's good to know organizations like NIMH and SAMHRI are pushing this forward.
Absolutely. NIMH funds tons of research into risk factors, brain biology, new treatments. Sandpor's voice focuses on advancing behavioral health, providing information, treatment referrals, resources. Their work is vital for improving lives and reducing the burden of anxiety through ongoing research and support.
Wow. It really has been a deep dive. Fear and anxiety, so complex, so common. The key takeaway seems to be fear is immediate, anxiety is future-focused. Both are normal, but can become disorders that seriously impact life.
Exactly. And understanding them better, breaking down that stigma, it's so important. But the message is hopeful. Our understanding is growing, treatments are effective and improving, recovery and living a full life are definitely possible.
So, for you listening, as you go about your week, maybe just take a moment. Think about your own relationship with uncertainty. How might knowing about the brain's smoke detector and fire department change how you see those anxious feelings? And maybe, just maybe, try one small self-help technique we talked about, even just for a few minutes. Deep breathing, a short mindfulness exercise. It could be a small step towards finding a bit more calm in your own life.